Okay.
So welcome to this meeting of the Climate Change Working Group. I'm Joanna Collins, Vice Chair of the Working Group. I'd like to inform everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet via the Council's website and will be capable of repeated viewing. The images and sound recording may be used for training purposes within the Council. In order to ensure that the meeting is managed effectively, can everyone please keep to the following guidelines for speaking? Councillors should only use the raise your hand function to request to speak and only speak when invited to do so by the chair. Please switch off your camera and microphone when not speaking and remember to set your mobile phone to silent for the duration of the meeting. Any views expressed by any speaker in this meeting are the speaker's own and they do not necessarily reflect the views of the Council. Please can councillors be aware that the webcast will continue to be streamed live 20 seconds after the close of the meeting. This is due to a time delay in transmitting live. I'll now confirm the names of the remaining members of this committee. Councillor Pauline Bell, Councillor Angela Benham, Councillor Jenny Benzer, Councillor Dom Elliott-Starkey, Councillor Simon Evans, Councillor Linda Gruby, Councillor Madeleine Hall, Councillor Ian Huddleston, Councillor Peter Inman, Councillor Pam Reddy, Councillor Jill Scott, and Councillor Jean Todd, and Andy McEwen, the Chair. Then go to the agenda. Right, okay, so I'll move on to the agenda. First of all, apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies?
I've not received any.
Linda's got one.
Yeah, I've got apologies from Councillor Pam Reddy.
Thank you.
Right, so moving on, declarations of interest. Disclosable pecuniary interests, any? Take that as a no. And other interests. Okay, thank you. So, minutes of the previous meeting. Any comments on the minutes? Page 3. Sorry, page 1, page 2, and page 3. Any comments? I can't see any. So can we have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Benham. And anyone else? I can't see.
Councillor Evans has got his hands raised, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving to the air quality management plan. I think this is Dan McCrory. You here?
I am, yes.
Right, so when you're ready.
Yeah, do you want me to, I'm just going to try and share from my screen.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Have I got?
Can't see your screen.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it there. Sorry. Hang on, that hasn't worked, has it?
Oh, something's happening.
Something's happening, sorry.
There you go.
Oh, okay, great stuff. Can everybody see that okay? Is that in? Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Okay. So we're just getting that. Can you just see the screen, or do you see all the notes below it? Sorry, can you just ask?
No, we don't see. I can't see the notes.
Okay,
Usually
great
we can
stuff.
just see the screen.
All right, lovely. Okay, well, thank you very much. Today I've been asked to give you an overview of air quality management and how that sort of fits in with climate change. So basically, the idea is to give you an overview of the air pollution and what that is and what we're looking at. Then looking at a little bit on air pollution and climate change and how they interact. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on the health effects and a little bit of the legislation as why we look at air pollution. and then go through a little bit of what the air quality is like in High Peak, looking at the current sort of monitoring results and things like that. And then go through how we get to an air quality action plan, which is, and using Fairfield, which is our most recent air quality management area as an example. And then looking at the sort of measures that we're implementing jointly really with climate change and why they are connected. And then a little bit on the sort of where we're going in the future with air quality. It's quite a jam-packed lot of slides, and I appreciate that you possibly with the devices you're using you might not be able to read it all. So the idea is that they can also act as notes for you sort of down the line. I won't be discussing every single point on every slide, so don't panic about being here all night. Okay, so just to start off with, it's a little overview video really of air pollution in Derbyshire. This is something that we've had made from promotion with a few other councils, so I thought as an easy introduction this will give us a little overview on air quality.
So what causes air pollution in Derbyshire and Derby City?
So what causes air pollution in Derbyshire and Derby City?
But it's all of
Well,
us.
this might surprise you,
I am when I
but
light
it's
the
all
log
of us.
burner. You
I
are
am
when you
when I
drive
light
your
the
car
log
to the
burner.
corner shop.
Can't actually
You
see
are
the
when you
pictures,
drive
by
your
the way,
car to the
Dimitri.
corner shop, and
Businesses
they are taking
and
the kids to
employers
school.
too.
Businesses
explain.
and employers too.
It's all about air pollution.
So let me explain.
What causes it?
It's all
why
about
it's
air.
harmful.
Sorry, was that not playing?
We heard the voice, but I only saw a black screen, unless anybody
Oh.
else saw the.
Well,
I could
I saw
see
it. I
it.
don't know.
Oh right, okay. Must be something to do with my settings.
Very
But there was
echoey,
an
though.
echo.
I could see it. There's an echo, yeah.
Yeah, I
Could
can
I
see it.
suggest
I can
everyone
see it, but there
turns-
is an echo.
Could I suggest everyone turns their microphone off while Dan plays it and see if that resolves it?
Sorry about that. Try again, shall we? Sorry.
So what causes
air pollution in Derbyshire and Derby City?
Well, this might surprise
you,
but it's all of us.
but it's all of us.
I am when I light the log
I
burner.
am when I light the
You
log
are
burner.
when you drive your car to
You
the
are
corner
when you
shop.
drive your car
And
to the
they
corner
are taking
shop.
the kids to
And
school.
they are taking the kids to
Businesses
school.
and employers
Businesses and employers too. So let me explain. It's all about air pollution. What causes it, why it's harmful, and what we can do about it together. When people say air or particle pollution or emissions, it's just different ways of talking about the gases and tiny particles that affect the quality of our air. If air pollution rises too high, like along busy roads, it can harm our health. And air quality is a measure of whether the air is clean enough for us to stay healthy. For people with conditions like asthma, lung disease, and some allergies, high levels of air pollution can quickly make their breathing worse and irritate the eyes, nose, and throat. But over the years, it can affect everyone, contributing to things like lung cancer, strokes, and heart disease. It's hard to think that something we can't see and touch can be harmful to our health. The majority of harmful emissions come from road transport and burning wood and coal in domestic fires. So what can we do about it? Well, there are lots of ways we can help to reduce air pollution in our communities. More than half of car trips are under 5 miles. Why not make a pledge to leave the car at home just 1 day a week? Use your feet, bus, or even an electric bike. Switching your engine off when you're stationary is a simple way everyone can reduce air pollution, particularly in residential areas. Electric vehicles can also play a role in reducing air pollution and save money. Why not look at alternative fuels when you next invest in a new car? Or look at alternative heating sources for your home. Use cleaner fuels in your wood burner or fire, and avoid burning garden waste. All this is healthier for us all, can help us save money, and reduce air pollution where we live. Together, one small change at a time, we can all help to improve air quality in our neighbourhoods.
So just turn my mic on. So, but what you can see, that video was a little overview really of everything I'm going to talk about today, I guess. And one of the key things to sort of think of with climate change is that climate change and air pollution essentially caused by harmful emissions of gases. And these are generally from the same source, which is burning fossil fuels. So the goal of the Climate Change Action Plan is to essentially reduce emissions of greenhouse gases, whereas the goal of the Air quality action plan is to reduce the exposure of the public to, in general, nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter, which are the two sort of pollutants of the most concern for us. Why are they of concern? Well, the health effects, as was touched on in the video, that poor air quality is now considered to be the largest environmental risk to health in the UK. And then there's a lot of data on that you can read at your leisure in terms of the estimates regarding the impact both financially and physically of these various pollutants. Now, the sources of air pollution should be very similar to the ones that you might have discussed previously in the climate change. They are, as noted, basically from combustion from manufacturing industries and all these other different sources here. The key ones to look at from air pollution point of view are road transport when it comes to nitrogen dioxide, and more recently residential burning and household coal when it comes to particulate matter. So, very brief history of legislation. Air quality has been known about for an awful lot number of years, and the first time that it was ever been noted in literature is right back in 1306, when it was the first proclamation that prohibited some tradesmen from using certain sorts of coal that was considered to be too dusty and dirty to use. This has then evolved. It took a great leap forward in the 50s, where there was the London smogs and the Great Smog of 1952. And the picture on your right here is actually taken during the day as an event in that. And that led to the government introducing the first Clean Air Act. This has then evolved over time. And probably from air quality point of view, the main thing that came in was in the Environment Act in 1995, which set a duty on councils to look at air quality in their area and to assess it against certain standards. And if they were breaching these standards, to do something about it, basically, and prepare an air quality management plan. These have then evolved in terms of the targets that we then are assessing our air quality against. And the two here to look at is the nitrogen dioxide target, which is 40. And then the other one recently is particulates, which I've talked about before. And the only exception here in the current AirQ objectives is that particulate matter has changed more recently. And that was introduced originally in the Environment Act in 2021, which introduced two new air quality targets for PM2.5. These were originally highlighted by a report that came out a couple of years ago in terms of WHO guidelines, which essentially was looking at the current targets that existed across Europe and the world, and essentially was saying that they aren't strict enough. So in government published its latest air quality strategy in 2023 and finally published the actual levels of PM2.5 that we're going to be striving for moving forward. And they are 10 and an interim target of 12 micrograms. And on the back of that, there was also the first case to be declared where unfortunately a young girl died and the actual cause of death was attributed to air quality. That was in London. So how do you determine if we've got an air quality problem? Well, unlike climate change, we are concerned with the level of pollutants at a particular location, which is known as relevant exposure, rather than the overall emission of pollutants, if that makes sense. To do this, we basically monitor for air quality issues. There's a little caveat there that we can also use computer modelling where we can't do direct modelling. So how do you do that? Well, there's basically three ways that you can monitor for air quality, depending on what you're trying to get out of it, the costs and the ease of doing it. The best really is something called continuous monitors. These are very accurate and give you great records continuously. The problem with them is, as you can see from the picture, they're very big. You can generally not install them where you want to install them, and they're extremely costly. The other alternative is to use what are known as passive diffusion tubes, and this is something that we employ a lot around High Peak. Now they're very small, they're very easy to deploy, and you can put them pretty much exactly where you want to put them. So where you think there's an issue, you can put them there. And then the third type is what are known as indicative, and these are a sort of halfway house between the first two. And these can give us continuous monitors, continuous results, so we can know throughout the day how the pollution changes, as opposed to the passive ones where we can only really get a gross estimate of the problems. We can't really see how it fluctuates during the day. The problem with the indicative is they tend to be a little less accurate than the other two, which are both pretty accurate, including the passive ones. However, they can still give us valuable information in terms of the trends that we might see in pollution. So we might be able to identify what time during the day we get high levels of pollution and do something about that. So currently in High Peak, we monitor at around 56 locations across the district. These are focused on our main larger towns, as you would imagine, and mainly next to our busy roads. And also in areas where we think people might be exposed to the pollution. So as again, it's not just the gross pollution that we're producing, it's where that pollution is ending up that's of concern within the Air Quality Action Plan. And we basically monitor each month, and we use those to obtain a figure for the year, which is what we measure against those targets that I showed us earlier. We currently don't monitor for particulate matter in High Peak. So what we have to do there is use modelling data. But that's not unusual. There's not many local authorities that do currently monitor for particulate matter. And that is due to the main way of doing it currently is through the larger monitoring units, and they're very difficult to install and to maintain. So what happens is the government sets up certain locations where it has these monitors that we then use that data from. However, we are looking to get continuous monitors, indicative ones, which I'll touch on later. Okay, so what is air quality like in High Peak? Well, generally it's pretty good, but we do have 3 air quality action plans. And these air quality management areas, now these air quality management areas were declared all on the basis of nitrogen dioxide exceeding the 40 limit. And at the time that they were declared, you can see that these were the sort of limits that we were getting. So they weren't massively over, but they were over. So these are the results of our air quality management areas over the last few years. I'm not going to go into detail on these because it's quite a lot of data, but we'll start off, that was Tintwistle, and the area circled is the time that we took the declaration. And so that was based on usually high results from the year before and previous years before that. And so that was Tintwistle. This is Glossop in Dinton Vale. So again, in 2019 is when we had sort of higher levels. Since then, we've improved dramatically in those areas. And then the latest one is in Fairfield, which we declared last year. And this gives a bit, I'm going to give a bit more detail on sort of the process by which we would do this and what consideration we make. So we started getting exceedances in around 2018, and then we followed those up in 2019 with further exceedances as we expanded our monitoring locations. Then, excuse me, there's a typo there, it should be 2020. Then in 2020, obviously COVID hit and we got a dramatic decrease due to decrease in traffic levels. And then 2021, it slowly recovered. And we've had a few different points that are exceeding ever since, including last year. Some of this was due to the building of the roundabout and various other issues that we have with traffic in that area, as I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with. So to get around some of that, to get sort of true representation, what we did was we employed computer modelling. And so it's a bit of a complex process, but basically we use transport data, etc., and monitored levels, and we look at areas that might be exceeding based on the computer model in addition to our monitoring data. We also looked at PM2.5 and PM10 and modelled those, and we're currently okay for that. And then, as you'll be aware, last year, around this time, as a precautionary approach, we declared the areas where the model had decided that there might be an exceedance in the future, plus the areas that we'd identified as an exceedance with our direct monitoring. Okay, so once we've declared an area as an AQMA, we're required to produce an air quality action plan that outlines all the actions we're going to take to try and get this back down below the appropriate levels. So the first thing we need to do there is something called source apportionment. So we need to get an idea of why we're exceeding and what's causing this. And so what we do is we again look at some, do a bit of computer modeling, and we essentially split down the sources of nitrogen dioxide to 3 different areas. One's what's known as the regional background, and that's can be pollutants that are coming in from outside of the district or outside of the area, but all contribute to the overall pollution levels. This is often, if you think of in particulate terms, although this is nitrogen dioxide, that would be things like a Saharan sandstorm, which often brings in things like particulate matter to us, but we can't influence that in any shape or form. Then it's got something called local background, and that is things like domestic burning, maybe industrial processes that might be going on in the area, that type of thing. And then the third source is road traffic. And for us, road traffic accounts for the majority of air pollution. And in this instance, on Fairfield, we determine it to account for around 60%, 59.2% of the pollution. We can go further with that, and we can split down into, again, with our models to see what of the traffic is actually causing those issues, or what we think is causing those issues. And in this instance, essentially all falls to diesel cars and or HGVs and diesel HGVs and LGVs. So once we know this, these are the sort of things that we can use to target our action measures. So in generally, they're targeted at reducing the source of the emission. So that's exactly the same as climate change. But also, as I mentioned before, we are also looking at reducing the exposure of residents to these emissions. So in the high peak AQMA, the reduction of source emission from traffic, the main sources were basically diesel light goods vehicles, diesel cars and HGVs. So the other thing that was identified that we need to improve traffic flow and reduce congestion. So that's adjusting where we get the buildup of pollution. So that's an exposure thing. So if we've got, say, for example, a traffic light or queuing traffic in an area that's near to properties or people that might be exposed to those exhaust emissions, we might try and look at a means to reduce that congestion. Or in some example, we might even be able to do some sort of direct intervention, but they're very difficult to do actually in terms of, say, putting like a barrier or something there. So generally, we're all still looking at reducing the source, and that would be things like reducing, trying to switch people away from diesel vehicles or vehicles altogether, or certainly ones that use fossil fuels, so going into electric vehicles that don't produce any emissions. We've also realised that we need to improve our monitoring and traffic counts and get a better model of all 3 of our AQMAs, so that when we do suggest things like traffic changes, we can get a better idea of what they will lead to through the models that we might have set up. And we also want to further identify further background sources, so getting a better idea of how much, say, localised burning in a particular area might contribute to the air quality issues in that area. So within the Air Quality Action Plan, we to reduce the source of the emissions and the exposure of these emissions, the action plan is brought in. The action plan is broken down into essentially 6 key priorities. The priority 1, these should be somewhat familiar with you if you've been doing the climate change. Priority 1 is transport measures. So that will be looking at changes to the road layout or facilitating the greener use of transport that we were talking about before, and to reduce congestion. Priority 2 would be to facilitate people to move away from from cars and combustion engines and to use public transport and or other sustainable forms of travel, walking, cycling, that type of thing. We have another one that's lead by example measures. So that's essentially stuff that we will look to do in-house to improve our air quality. But again, that would be factors such as efforts that we're doing to reduce our own emissions. Planning and policy, again, very similar to climate change. So that would be putting in things like supplementary planning documents that require air quality to be considered within a planning application and that type of thing. And then the other one is sort of promotional things and behavioural change, similar to the video that I played at the start, is something that we commissioned through the Derbyshire Air Quality Forum, and that's available on our website. And the other sort of promotional things that we do. And then priority 6 within the plan is to increase our understanding of the air quality and to look at introducing particulate monitors as well. So of those sort of different things that I've identified, 5 of these are directly concerned with reducing the source. The only exception to this really is the transport measures, which require us to work with colleagues in the various highways to help us to work on direct solutions to those things. So in the AQMA number 1, Tint Whistle, we're working with the National Highways. I have to say that that's been difficult. They've been quite slow to act in terms of looking at measures that they can undertake there. The main reason for that, I believe, is because of the impending A57 link road that's coming in, and so they want to see, they don't want to do fresh modelling or etc. until that has happened. Whereas DCC, we've engaged with them quite readily, and they've started to put forward a series of measures for road improvements. So if you're local to these various areas, they want to upgrade the signal control on the A57 Glossop Road to reduce congestion, and we've also got a bus service improvement plan to reduce the emissions from that, and also to provide priority to those things to hopefully reduce congestion. And then more in Fairfield, we're looking at a redesign potentially of the roundabout at the bottom of the A6, A53, and various signalisation options. There's various other things that are also part of that package, and that's using these urban traffic management systems. And one of the things that we're looking at, it's a strong possibility, is introducing some air quality monitors within Fairfield and within Glossop that will also feed into the urban traffic management system. So if we have times where there's bad air quality, it can possibly give prioritisation to certain routes that would be more for the highways people to know that, but to integrate it all into the urban traffic management system. However, when we've identified the measures in the Air Quality Action Plan that address the source rather than the exposure, these are pretty much identical and certainly complementary to the measures adopted in the Climate Change Action Plan. And so this is because most climate change actions are ultimately aimed to reduce the use, reliance and combustion of fossil fuels. So in the case of air quality, that's reduction in the use of petrol and diesel combustion engines. So there's a bit more detail here in terms of further reading you may want to do in terms of sort of more specifics on how climate change and air quality interact. That one's a little bit complicated, but generally speaking, you're looking at a sort of simple chart here in terms of where we get an air quality improvement, we also get a climate change benefit. So that's these actions here. So you can see specifically like reducing transport emissions, improves air quality, improves climate change. And there's very few that are equally detrimental, but they're generally complementary. And so this can be seen in the way that we've done our sort of priorities. I won't go through all of these, but so in the priority 1, as I mentioned earlier, is our transport measures. So when we break that down further within the AQM action plan, that's things like increasing installation of the EV chargers. So as you may be aware, that's currently being dealt with predominantly through DCC, and we've got quite a series of chargers hopefully coming. So they include the rapid destination chargers, which are, when you go to somewhere and you want to charge up fairly quick, and then charge points and lamppost charges, which are more for residential overnight charging. We've also got things like reviewing of parking strategies within our AQAP, which is to incentivise the use of low emission vehicles and do sort of anything we can to encourage people to switch from diesel type cars to more electric or low emission vehicles. There's things like the bus service improvement plan, which is again low emission buses, and that's now going to be prioritised for Glossop and Dinton Vale. And we're also working at a review of a freight strategy with, we've got quite a lot of HGVs, as you know, with low mass and things like that being a base within High Peak. And so we're working with DCC to try and get a review of the freight strategy to see if we can get improvements in the emissions from those vehicles and get them. And these are completely shared goals with actions that we've got in our climate change action plan. So, for example, we encourage to support the increase of use of electric vehicles as a priority within the climate change action plan. It's exactly the same priority within our air quality action plan. And similarly, with active travel and sustainable travel, we're currently within the Dinton Vale action plan supporting the production of the Glossop active travel master plan and associated schemes. And similarly, the Buxton on the Move with the Buxton Town team. These are essentially documents that bring together all the different things that are currently being done, which are very varied. So that would be completion of key cycling routes, walking networks, promotion of walking with schools, that type of thing. The purpose of these documents is that they bring them together in one place, and then we can look for better sources of funding for these. And again, this is completely in tandem with the goals that we're looking at for the climate change action plan. And again, as I've touched on before, things like lead by example measures, which again, all about reducing the source. So reducing emissions from council vehicles, incentivising staff to switch to low emission vehicles, that type of thing. And again, completely in tandem with the current climate change action plan. So broadly speaking, in terms of that, we're pretty much on the same page completely all the time, except for perhaps one area. The one area is biomass. And biomass, as you know, can be used over a period of time to help with meeting climate change goals. But sort of, as I think I've touched on earlier, for air quality purposes, certainly in urban areas, that's only good if it's done correctly, because burning of biomass also releases sort of levels of nitrogen dioxide and, more importantly, small particulate matter. This is very much this. I'm finishing up now, but this is very much something that's in the current, or the previous government's thoughts in the current air quality strategy that was issued in April last year. And there, the focus now is moving away from nitrogen dioxide and moving much more towards particulate matter release, of which they consider the primary producer of that to be local burning, and so that would be from wood burning stoves and coal and various other burning activities. And so to that end, I will show you another video now. I hope it goes a bit better than the other one, which is something that we are launching in terms of our priorities that are not entirely in line with climate change, but to promote sort of better burning for our residents. And this is one that was issued by the government, but gives an overview of those issues.
Take a good look at me.
I look so
cozy,
don't I?
Cozy, don't I?
You just want to
snuggle up next to me, grab some tea,
Daniel, I think you need
and let
to
me
turn
warm your
your
toes.
microphone off, probably.
But did you know that when you feed me poor quality fuels, such as wet wood or house coal, tiny harmful particles present in smoke are released into the air, which could damage your health and the health of those around you? The good news is that if you use an open fire or stove, there are things that you can do to burn better. A few small changes can make a massive difference. Always feed me with fuels that are cleaner to burn. Look for the Ready to Burn logo on the packaging. If you burn wood, make sure it's dried properly. Freshly cut wood needs to be air dried for a minimum of 2 years before it's safe to burn. Have a skilled tradesperson clean and maintain your appliance regularly. Get your chimney swept at least once a year. This reduces emissions, as well as the chances of chimney fires breaking out. Taking steps like these will help you improve the air you breathe, helping to protect your health and the health of those around you. Let's burn better. To find out more, search Burn Better UK Air.
Despite this sort of proactive, there's no emphasis currently to ban wood burners across the districts or anything like that across the country. It's just to tighten up the rules. So the sale of traditional coal has now been banned everywhere, not just in smoke control areas. As you may be aware, we currently have 2 smoke control areas, one in Glossop and one in Buxton, not the whole of Buxton. So as one of our actions in the Air Quality Action Plan, we are looking at potentially extending this. And this is something that's also been requested by some residents. But that would be subject to political approval and consultation. One of the things I might have mentioned earlier is that we are looking at improving our monitoring. And so to that end, we have got 2 of these monitors here that you see to your right. They do monitor for particulates, albeit they are indicative to a degree. We have now got to the point where we're hopeful that it's quite a complicated process, but we're hopeful that these monitors will be installed this month, and hopefully by the end of October, one in Fairfield, as I say, and one in Dinting Vale. Okay, so that's a whistle-stop tour of air quality and currently where we're at. There's a lot more detail if you want to know anything more about any of it. But for now, is there any questions on any of that? Cool.
Any questions? I can't see any. Oh, yes, one. Dom Elliott-Starkey. And then Gillian, and then Linda.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that was really useful, actually. So thank you very much. And I think I've probably emailed you many times, Daniel, about certainly Dinton Vale and some of the issues we've got going on up there, especially obviously since the plan application. One of the things I know that I have raised with you before in the past is around how we can bring in education to make this kind of, I suppose, sustainable, obviously through the generations.
Yeah.
And especially if we are now looking at getting these new monitors, I think having that data and actually, you know, getting the kids engaged with it and looking at it, that's obviously going to be really important. I just wondered if there's been any progress on that, or, you know, if there are any plans, if schools have been approached. And for the sake of everyone, I just want to disclose I am a governor at Dinton School, so I suppose there is a slight interest there.
Okay, yeah, we work with regards to schools, we work with the schools project officer, which is Rob, and I've forgotten his surname, Baines, is it? That works with the schools on active travel. And in addition to that, and I know he's been an approach to school about various things that we might want to do. I don't think specifically about the monitor and interactions with the monitor, but we've also got there's Move More Glossop that have been involved with some of the schools, and they've been engaging with the schools in terms of doing, and I think with Dinton as well, Dinton Vale.
Yeah.
And they recently commissioned Sustrans to do a sort of walking study, which is looking at safe routes for kids and ones where there might be low pollution. Now, those studies and that study has been incorporated into the thing I mentioned earlier, the Glossop Active Travel Master Plan. And so there is funding of, I've been working with, there's rather oddly another Daniel McCrory in DCC, which is a bit peculiar, but there is, and he's does the Active Travel Master Plan. Once we've got this document and we've got costings for the various things, so for example engaging with schools and doing promotion in that way, then we're looking at sources of funding by how we can do that. And there is a few sources currently as a result of this A57 bypass. And in addition to sort of trying to get money out of anything like any of the planning applications that might be going through anyway, but we may as well try and get money out of them to do proactive stuff with that. So yeah, basically the answer is yes, absolutely. We're trying to work with the schools. In Staffordshire, we devised, which was part of our Air Aware, which we're bringing over to High Peak, hopefully. We've got school plans that incorporate air quality directly into the schools, and we've got an officer that's given assemblies before to the kids as well and got them engaged in that way.
No, yeah, that sounds brilliant. Thank you.
Right, so Gillian next. Sorry, Jill Scott next.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, Dan. That was really, really interesting. And it's one of my points is coming on the back of what Dom said. I'm actually a governor at Hayfield Primary School. We're not one of the areas, obviously, but we have a walking bus. Yeah. And it's a really, really good thing to do. It's very hard to get parents on board. So I'd be very interested to kind of look at ways that we can do that. And also I know Derbyshire are looking at school streets. It wouldn't necessarily work for all schools, excuse me, depending on the streets. But that's another thing that will reduce the kind of air quality around schools during pickup time, etc. So it'd be interesting to see what work's being done with Derbyshire on work around schools, reducing the traffic around schools, because there's a lot there. And the other thing is kind of about, I don't know if this is a fair question really, but is there still quite a lot of money in the bus service improvement plan? Because I know it's been going for several years, I think possibly since COVID, to get people back onto the buses, but is it still quite a big
I believe so. I'll actually, we only get really to discuss it with DCC when we have these joint transport groups, and that's where we raise our issues and say, can we want in our case, I wanted the low emission buses to be prioritised around Dinton Vale and that area because of our issues. But in terms of the actual pot that's left, I could find out, but I couldn't give you a specific figure right now. But I believe, I wasn't under the impression that it had been a reduced pot the last meeting I had. It was, but I can find that out. I can see where we're at with that. And just on the schools thing, we have just commissioned from this end, from the Staffordshire end with the Air Aware thing that I was on about, sorry, some new signage, which we are in the process of sending out or deploying ourselves outside of schools, which is switch off when you drop off sort of signage, which is things for parents, with the intention to do that for High Peak as well. And I need to speak to Rob in schools and get that. And so it's whether we send these to schools for them to put up, or with ones that aren't engaging, we just go and put them up. They're very, they're not controversial. They are literally just a polite message to parents, really. They're not designed to scare anybody about it or everything. It's just a polite message.
But that's a really good thing, though, because lots of parents leave their engine running. I mean, they do.
Yes.
It's a really good thing. So to have some of those signs would be great. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
No problem.
So moving on, Linda Gruby.
Yeah, thanks for that. A couple of questions, really. Firstly, thanks for the presentation. That's really useful. Fairfield comes into my area. Yeah. And I'm just wondering if going forward, will we be able to use the more detailed stats that you're going to get to put pressure on the government to provide some funding? Because on Fairfield Road, we get a lot of standing traffic. Well, you've highlighted the Lightwood Road situation, and I've argued long and hard with DCC about trying to get a change to the road plan there. Can we use this information to put pressure on A, on DCC, and B, onto the government for funding, really?
Well, what I would say is that as soon as we declared Fairfield, the pressure is started to be exerted, because one of the reasons that we've gone down the route of being very precautionary in our air quality declarations, and we're little bit unique across the district, and there's no way that we've got the worst air quality across Derbyshire, I can tell you that. But we are precautionary when we declare. And one of the reasons for that is that then when you've got an area that's declared as an air quality management area, it bestows it to be considered in a certain way. It has to have consideration, for example, in a planning application, they have to consider air quality. And as a result of us declaring it and now working with DCC are obliged to look at the air quality issue and do something about it. So you might have picked up on so DCC have come back with some measures that they're looking at, and one of those is the Lightwood Road, and one of those is commissioning a study on the roundabout at the bottom, the little roundabout, and seeing if they can do any improvements to that to improve the flow. So the first stage from them, and it's got to go to their cabinet, but they have proposed to look at both of those things now. In terms of us going forward with central government grants based on that, it's hard to say. I don't know how it's going to pan out with the new government, basically. There was an issue last year where, because of funding, I guess, and various things, that they stopped what's known as the air quality grant, where we could apply for money based on that specifically. If you had an air quality action area, air quality management area, that we could apply for funding through that. They've pulled that last year. Now, whether that'll be reinstated and we can use that as another avenue, I don't know at this stage, I'm afraid.
Okay. All right. Food for thought anyway, isn't it? All right. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Jean? Hello, Jean?
Yes, sorry, just switching things. Yes, thanks very much for that, Dan. I thought it was very interesting. I've almost forgotten what I was going to ask now. But I will comment on that the roundabout at the bottom of Fairfield Road. I mean, I was part of the town team study group. We were just monitoring the traffic down there quite a few years ago, actually. So they've got quite a lot of data, but I suppose it's a little bit out of date now.
Yes, I think after COVID, they're having to redo everything in terms of what's typical now. What's typical seems to have slightly shifted. So maybe that. Sorry to continue.
Oh, the one thing I did think, those monitors that you want to put in, the passive monitors, it said that they were the least accurate. Yes.
It doesn't mean they're not accurate, but what it means is that we wouldn't. What it means is that we wouldn't declare. So with the diffusion tubes, they're pretty accurate for what we get, and we can declare and have certainty in terms of the numbers we're getting. With the continuous monitors, what we would do typically is that we would put, say, for example, our nitrogen dioxide, we put a couple of those tubes next to it. We know what the results of those are, that they're accurate. And then we'd use these others. They're not bad, and they're getting better all the time, but we would use those to reference against the results we were getting from the continuous monitor. So we know we've got some. They're all, we will be using the company to get them all calibrated correctly. But the information it will give us is that, so say it's giving a reading of 20 when the reading is 15. The idea with the indicative monitors is that you'll still get the trend. So you will still see the time during the day where that, even though it's giving a 15 or a 30, it's relative to the actual level of pollution. So it's still what's known as an indicative monitor. So you'll still get you might go, during the school run, we're getting a spike in pollution. The actual number might not be spot on, but it'll be pretty close. It's what they use. I mean, you might have seen these, like where they do climate air quality in my area checkers on online sometimes and things like that. That's the sort of level that they use, and they're used very much now across a lot of Britain, because of the reason that they're used is it's so hard to monitor accurately for particulates in particular, because you just can't put in these big massive machines, and they require electric feeds. They're required to be maintained all the time. They're just more trouble than they're worth in many ways. Whereas these little things, we can they're still a pain to actually get them installed, I can tell you, but we have seemed to have achieved it now. But they still give us a lot of useful data. Yeah.
Okay, so is that okay, Jean?
Yeah, but can I just ask one more question?
Well,
Sorry.
quickly, because
I was just thinking the trees, that give off the volatile gases.
Yeah.
Which are the worst ones for that then?
I couldn't tell you the speed. I'd have to look that up. But,
okay. Well,
I mean, it's not the end. The tree issue and the interaction with us is trees are a funny thing. They can be used effectively. Planting trees can also be used as barriers, but they can also trap pollutants. So you just have to use those carefully. They can be very much part of the armory for air quality prevention, in the same way a barrier could be. But you don't want to use a species that does give off the VOCs, and you don't want to set them up in such a way that they might trap some pollutants in an area that people might then breathe. Sorry.
Yep. Okay. So Peter now. Peter Inman.
Hi, hi Dan. Thanks very much for the presentation. It highlights a couple of things really about how we need to sort of work with other parties to improve the air quality in the region, and I mean specifically with DCC, because a lot of it's tied in with highways.
Absolutely,
so I've actually been trying to get in touch with the other Dan, who you mentioned before, DCC, regarding the Levi project, which isn't Jean's. I've worked that one out. It is to do with electric vehicles, the chargers, and I haven't had much response back, and I just feel sometimes it highlights it's quite a glacial movement working with across, other county organisations. And things are really slow in what is a really urgent problem. I mean, you've highlighted, all of the issues today related to air quality, but until we stop using fossil fuels, we're not going to sort any of this really out. So, how do we improve this working relationship with DCC in terms of things like electric chargers?
The Levi funding, the issue with that was essentially that it was only top tier councils that could apply for that funding, so we couldn't apply for any of that directly ourselves, and so then we have to work with them after that. Our role with that is really to give them make sure we're happy with the legal agreements that they set up for, and that we can provide them with land and area or suitable locations to put in the charges. I currently sit on, there's a DCC-wide transport group, and we're also set up now a DCC projects group that was set up directly with High Peak. And so what that does is that every month now we are looking at all the different projects that are going on across a lot of it. And one of the good things about having these sort of joined up, in this instance, an active travel plan, is it brings together all the schemes that are going on that are really going for the same goal. What I would say is it's much better than it was when it first launched. There was different groups doing different things. I mean, there's about 4 groups doing EV. Now that does seem we do seem to be a bit more focused on it. I'm pretty confident actually in the EV installation going across High Peak. I can send you an update. I've got a pretty good update recently. I can send that to you in terms of what's been proposed.
Okay, so maybe you could send that to everyone on this group.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, great. And then, sorry, is that okay, Peter?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much, Dan. Cheers.
No problem.
Okay, so Dom, can you be very brief, please? Because I think
I'll be as quick as possible. It's just on the back of Jim's comment. I know from obviously when we had that planning application go through on Dinton Vale, there was questions around the current monitoring and actually, when it was turned on, when it was turned off, and all that kind of stuff, which is obviously why we're looking at hopefully getting this new one. My only question would be is if these new ones aren't that accurate, will it still stand up when it comes to planning, or is there going to be a opposition to some extent to where the people turn around and go, well, it's not accurate enough and therefore it doesn't hold its own?
They're not to replace the existing monitors. That's what I'd say. They're to enhance our monitoring. So in a sense, we're not getting rid of the monitors we've already got there that tell us about the issues, if you like. These are to tell us when they're happening during the day rather than the actual. So no, is in the short, that we won't be getting rid of our diffusion tubes and whatnot anyway, so they'll still be there.
Okay.
This is just extra.
Cool, that's fine. Thank you.
Great. Good. Thank you very much, Dan. That was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So first of all, Anthony, do you want to take over or shall I just continue?
No, Joanna, if you're okay carrying on, please carry on.
Yep. Okay. So next item is Community Engagement Day. Are you going to talk about that, Gillian?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Hello, hi everyone. Yeah, just very briefly, I know we've talked about this before. We've now got a date for the Community Engagement Day. It's going to be both for the Climate Change Action Plan and for the Plan for Nature, although that's not actually formally been approved. We'll probably have a bit of a soft launch. I think Katie's going to talk a little bit more around where she's at with that now. It'll be aimed at community groups so that we can help sort of upskill and empower them to go and replicate projects in their areas and help us get our messages out. This time it's going to be a bit different because we've actually been applying some joined up thinking. So Katie and I have been working with all different officers across the council who work with community groups to try and see whether where we can level, sort of align things together and sort of be better than the sum of our parts, basically. And I think that's been really great. We've learned quite a lot about what's going on and been able to use that. So that's what we're doing. It's you should have had an invite. If you haven't, please let us know. It's on the 22nd of October, New Mills Town Hall in the afternoon. Please do share it with any groups that you think might be interested. Their core function does not have to be environment. It might be a brownie group that might want to do a project. So please do share it. And the other thing I was going to say was that the day format will be quite similar to as it was before, where we have tables with different themes so that we can sort of co-design it with the community groups so that they have a place to share their ideas as well. And the other piece of news that sort of relates to that is we now have our wonderful energy officer who's just started about 2 weeks ago. So you'll get to meet her at some point, well, at this event anyway. But yeah, she's got a lot of really good previous skills. Katie, have I missed anything off?
Don't think so. And I think just the last thing to add was so when sharing with different community groups about this event, we're looking for a few to host a kind of workshop table. So yeah, ideally we'd get a few groups sort of putting themselves forward and volunteering for that as well. So we'd encourage people to spread the word.
Yeah, so anybody that's got a project that would be good practice to share. So I think last time we had the Buxton Repair Cafe shared how they'd set that up and the pitfalls and that kind of thing. So, or if there's anything, I know there was a particular interest in having a session just for the friends of groups, so they could all sort of share ideas and get to know each other. So that will be one, and that links into the work that the parks are doing as well. So yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
So
there's a question there, Joanne.
Yes. Yeah. So Pauline.
Yeah, it's just on the group, on the event in New Mills, is there a reason why it's on a Tuesday afternoon? Would it not be better at the weekend?
Well, we struggle to get staff because we have to pay them extra, and I'm not the manager, so I can't authorise that. But there'll be lots of other agencies there, and also it was actually really difficult to book the space, so we were very limited. Thankfully, it's not half term because there'd be nobody there. But yeah, we have this. People prefer evenings or they prefer the daytime. We can't please everybody, but maybe we'll try and do something a bit smaller in an evening, maybe more locally next year.
Okay, right, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question? I've actually got something, if nobody else wants to speak, which is we were asked to send an email round, and which I duly did, and I sent it to a group which I think probably wouldn't be reached through your list. I'm not sure, but and I got a comment, why does this all have to involve the same people all the time? In other words, members of groups usually know each other. There's a High Peak Green network, etc. I think is what this person meant. So how do we reach out to other people?
Yeah.
And I did respond that sending it to parish councils, which I know doesn't cover everywhere, but I think that will help if they do their job and communicate with their communities. But yeah. How do you get other people involved? And actually, you have said, you know, groups that aren't necessarily environmental groups. So have you got any other ideas about how to get other people involved?
Yeah, well, the working amongst ourselves with other people in High Peak Borough Council who work with communities obviously link into very different community groups than your sort of traditional green groups. So yeah, I absolutely know that I don't need to speak to the green groups that much. I really want to engage with those people that aren't, and you know, and it's a difficult thing because you know your men in sheds don't want to think that they're eco warriors, but actually they're doing an amazing thing for the environment, you know. But yeah, so it's just figuring out the language around it, I think, is part of it. But yeah, hopefully we'll get lots of different new groups that we can use and can keep building those relationships with. But the groups, all the groups that have applied for the grant fund, there's quite a diversity in amongst there as well, so that we'll send in an invite as well. So yeah.
Good. And will you be putting it on Facebook and so on? I mean, which I'm sure reaches different people. Great, good. Okay, I think that's quite a lot to respond to this person. So anybody else? Pauline, you've still got your hand up. I don't know if you've got something else or. Okay, does anyone else want to ask Gillian anything? Okay.
Thank you.
So moving on. Thanks, Gillian. To Katie and the Plan for Nature.
Yeah, evening everyone. So I'm just going to provide a really brief update on the Plan for Nature and where we're at following the consultation. So we held a public consultation on the draft Plan for Nature between the 8th of July and the 19th of August. And the sort of main purpose of that consultation really was to sort of gather feedback on some key points and sort of questions before we can finalise and properly launch the plan. So we pulled together an online survey and questionnaire for the consultation, but then we also made sure that there were hard copies as well available in both Buxton Town Hall and Glossop Town Hall. So consultation information about that was shared with councillors, local biodiversity and nature and climate groups. Details were also shared with parish councils. And then there was also an accompanying media release as well. So a post on the website and also some social media posts to sort of try and reach as many people as possible on that. So the main questions from the consultation were mainly sort of around the methodology used within the Plan for Nature to gather the baseline biodiversity data. But we also asked a few questions on sort of the overall vision set out within the plan and also the sort of main bit really, which was the proposed action plan, and also just a few questions on general sort of layout and presentation as well. So in addition to that, we also asked sort of groups and parishes whether there were any additional sort of biodiversity projects they wanted to make the council aware of, so that we could kind of build upon those different initiatives now when the plan's been adopted and sort of properly kick off the delivery. We received quite a lot of responses to the consultation, the survey, which was great. And there were some additional sort of more detailed responses made directly via email as well. So lots of really good points raised, lots of detailed responses, too many to kind of pull up and run through during this meeting. But so myself and also Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, who wrote the plan for us, have started to kind of make the required updates to the plan to take into consideration the feedback that was received. So we're just waiting on a few bits now from Wildlife Trust to sort of complete the final updates to the plan before it can be properly finalised, and then we can launch it after that. So I think rough timescales really probably sort of over the next maybe 4 weeks to get the plan in a bit more of a final form, and then I guess next steps following that really are to take the sort of final version of the plan possibly to executive or council meeting for members to vote on whether they want to adopt the plan or not. I think it's gone to this group a few times, just more generally as a sort of a, to feed into when it was being developed and provide a bit of discussion on that. So that's it for Plan for Nature update for this time, and happy to take any questions if anyone's got any.
Any questions? Jean.
I was just wondering about the thing that Dan said about the trees, basically about which trees to plant according to whether they're giving off these volatile gases and such like that would be bad for the air quality. So I don't know whether that's in there at all.
I think when we've kind of been developing the plan for nature and also the delivering on the climate change action plan, we've kind of identified that there might possibly be a need to update the council's tree strategy. I think the last update to that was back in 2016, and there's no kind of targets in there for increasing tree cover or relating to tree planting. It's mostly about management of existing trees. So I think that's kind of like an opportunity we've identified that could tie in quite nicely with that really, and link, nature, and climate adaptation, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Gillian.
Just to follow up on that a little bit, I think we're very conscious that we can't look at any of these plans in isolation. So with the plan for nature, we have to think about adaptation, we have to think about neutrality, we have to think about air quality. So we are conscious of that. It's just how we all make sure that we're working together properly to make sure that we've considered that. So it is something that we're mindful of. We just have to figure out how to actually implement it properly and in a really sound and secure, beneficial way for everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I must say I think it's a fantastic plan. Very detailed and lots and doable actions as well. So thank you. Okay, so moving on, biodiversity training. I don't know who's going to talk about that.
Probably me again. So okay. I'll try and keep it brief, but it was just a reminder really about this sort of introductory biodiversity training that we've shared details around previously. So you might remember an email coming through over the last couple of months about a biodiversity training module that we'd quite like councillors to sort of get involved with. So within the nature declaration that we made earlier in the year, we made a commitment as a council to ensure that both elected members and employees receive training about the nature crisis and also their role in supporting nature's recovery. So really important, both for sort of members in terms of decision making and ensuring sort of nature's duly considered in that, but then also officers as well. So considering nature across the sort of various council operations. So the details were all in the email sent round over the last couple of months, but we'll also ensure that they're provided again with these minutes. So the training's run by a company called the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and they have quite a lot of sort of free interactive sort of online modules on that website. So the biodiversity training, it's only an hour long sort of introductory module, but that platform itself has quite a lot of really good, material on there. So it's definitely no harm lost in signing up for an account, in case you want to sort of, complete further training based on personal interest, in due course. So yeah, just wanted to invite all members on this working group who are sort of interested to complete that biodiversity training. And thanks again to those who've already sort of progressed with signing up for an account, and also completing the training as well. And just feel free to get in touch with me, and just let me know if you've got any questions, or if you're struggling to access the module, that kind of thing, really. That's it for biodiversity training. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So any questions? Can't see any questions. So Katie, perhaps it would be an idea to circulate the link again, because people won't see the minutes immediately. So if you circulate it on email again, perhaps to all the councillors, and remind them that it's there. Is that okay?
Yes. Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, good.
Katie, if you want to send that through to me, I'll send that out for you.
Great, thanks Sarah, will do.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Katie. Okay, so the last item is the work programme. So, sorry, I'm just getting it up. So, any suggestions for the work programme? Gillian?
Just a suggestion. Obviously, I'm still pulling together the annual climate change report, but perhaps the recommendations from that will inform the work plan, because I am proposing that, as we've discussed before, that we review the plans and targets within the next sort of 6 months, year. So maybe we could do that.
Yes, that would be good.
I mean, obviously
Yes.
that will be an agenda item, but yeah.
Yeah. Do you think? So do you think the work? Oh, I don't know what's happening now. Well, it's suddenly gone funny. Okay, stopped. Do you think the work programme? Sorry, not the work programme. The report will be ready for January.
Oh yeah. I want to get it done this month and get it to executive and for the December meeting. So
okay, for December, yeah, that would be better actually. Yeah. Okay. Right. So there's the work programme. I think perhaps we should have a brief report in December on the Community Engagement Day as well, and any actions that come out of it, which are sort of relevant to the council's delivery of its plans.
Yeah, could do that.
There's an update on nature. Linda?
Yeah, sorry there. I was just looking at the work programme, and I noticed we've got the peak cluster coming in to give us a presentation, which will be really interesting. I just wonder, have we approached Tarmac, because they're looking at the carbon capture and they've got a lot of work going on down on their cement plant? Can we see if we can get them to come and explain to us what carbon capture is, what it means and how it's done? I have contacts there if someone would like me to take that up.
That's on there, isn't it?
I haven't seen carbon capture.
Well,
that is what that is, Linda.
Sorry?
That peak cluster is the carbon capture project. It's 5 cement plants across High Peak and Moorlands.
Yeah, that's different to the way that they're doing
ones?
that, though, isn't
Okay.
it? The
I'm not
carbon
sure.
capture is different to what's going on at Tunstead.
Is it? Isn't
Yeah.
it part of the peak cluster?
They are part of the peak cluster, but it's a different operation in the way that they make cement at Tunstead.
Oh, I see
So
what you mean.
the peak cluster is going to be a lot of pipe work and moving away the carbon completely. But we've got a lot of work going on at Sunstead at the moment on capturing carbon and the way that they make cement. And
that
as you
sounds
know,
quite interesting, actually, more than the peak cluster, which, you know, may not happen for 10 years and by that time it'll be too late kind of thing.
they've made a lot of changes at Tarmac to reduce their carbon.
Yeah, I think that will be quite interesting because it is very important. I mean, to be fair, I think Breedon are as well. They really look at it. No, but you know, if you've got contacts with Tarmac, we must well have Tarmac, really.
Yeah, okay, I'll approach them and see if they would be willing to come and talk to us.
Yeah,
if that's
everybody
okay.
agrees. Any comments, objections to that idea? No? Okay, good. Thank you, Linda.
Good idea, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else got anything for the work programme? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, well, of course, if you have, you can always write to Gillian and we can consider it. So, okay, I think that's all then, unless anyone's got anything else they want to say. This isn't formal, so I think we can have any other business type stuff. No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very